Welcome to Be the Change. Today we will be speaking with Jason Weston. Jason is the past executive director of and a workshop facilitator for the Human Awareness Institute, HAI, links below. In addition, he is also a fine art photographer from a family life magazine once called the First Family of American Photography, links below. He holds a degree in philosophy from the University of California at Berkeley. Let me read from the HAI website. The Human Awareness Institute holds a bold vision of a world where people live in dignity, respect, understanding, trust, kindness, compassion, reverence, honesty, and love. Truly a bold statement. Welcome, Jason.
Good to be here, Lynn. Thanks for inviting me.
What we want to talk about today is the real essence of love. If we strip out adjectives like romantic or familial and all the things that we hold as sets of behaviors and attitudes about love, what are we actually left with?
One of the great questions of all time, really, I think.
Yeah.
What is it that has us as human beings care so much about another person or group of people that in some cases we would be willing to give our lives for them? And what is it that is alive in me when I say I love you to someone? What is that? And I think people frame it in different ways. Some people talk about love as a feeling, or I fell in love, or something like that. And I don't claim to have a corner on, well, I have the definition for everyone, but it seems to me that there are a few aspects of love that are pretty clear, at least for me. One is that it's not particularly transient, right? So if I love someone and then they do something that I don't like and I get angry, that anger is within the context of my love for them. So being angry doesn't strip away the love. It might feel a little blocked in the moment, like I might not be having the loving feeling in the moment, but my bigger commitment, my relationship with that person is still a loving relationship in which at the moment I happen to be angry. And people who have kids, I think, know this really well, because your kid does something you don't like and you get angry or you get upset or you're disappointed or whatever, and you ask, well, do you still love them? And well, of course I still love them, I just didn't like that. So there's a clear distinction between love and liking someone's behavior. And for me, love is, well, a number of things. One is it's a commitment that I make because I choose to be loving. And so it's also a choice. I could choose not to, but I think it's really much of the essence of who we are. And, we're not the only mammalian species with love. You look at dogs and they may not have language in the way we do and all the sophistication, but it would be hard to miss that there is something that dogs express, which sometimes is affection. Maybe they're jumping on you and licking you, but sometimes it's protection. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go into that. I'm not saying it's identical, but I think there is something deeply innate in human beings and mammals that is a care about the other, concern for the other, connection to the other. And it's in that connection, I think, that we find love as an expression of the relationship, right? There's also self-love. There's, there's love, my love for humanity. There's love for nature. I think all those are real. They're not the same thing, but how's that for a starting point?
That's good. Um, if we're going to distinguish between how we feel about human beings as opposed to how we feel about nature or how we feel about the ham sandwich we lovingly crafted for lunch, there's to distinguish those things, we have to look, I would think anyway, we have to look at who we are in the face of, you're saying, in the face of declaring the commitment to be loving. What does that actually look like, a commitment to be loving?
For me, it has to do with some of the words that you read at the beginning from the website from the Human Awareness Institute. And that is to treat other human beings with dignity, respect, understanding, trust. Those are, in some ways, those are putting the meat on the bones of love, right? So love is this big thing. And when you get down to the particulars, it means that I would never do anything intentionally to harm you. And in fact, I would do what I can to support you and keep you from harm. And that comes out of my love, my care, my commitment to your well-being. And I think that it's built in that way.
In the world of psychology, there's a notion called a circle of concern.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer someone is to us, the more willing we are to sacrifice for them, the more willing we are to protect them. Just, it seems like a natural, normal thing that a troop animal like human beings would be involved in. How do you think it works, or is it possible, I guess, to insist on enlarging one's circle of concern? I mean, it happens when there's a natural emergency. We get really concerned about victims of a natural event or even a terrorist event. What is it that has us narrow our circle of concern again after the event is over? And how can we continue to expand it?
I think that is the question of all time, because if your circle of concern is all of humanity, then war disappears, because you wouldn't consider going to war and harming other people if your circle of concern includes every person. And so I believe that we human beings evolved in basically small groups that where affinity, being connected to our group, was an intrinsic part of our survival. Being able to distinguish us from them, whoever they are, knowing that I could trust my group and I may not be able to trust people outside my group, created a kind of a safe or not safe. Am I, what's the truth of my situation here? And so I think it's a very natural thing for us human beings to do, to size up others and decide whether or not they're part of my group. And right now, I feel like humanity is in a stage of rapid social evolution where we need to learn that every person in the world is part of my circle of concern. And I think it's concentric circles, right? So I have a stronger connection with Marcy, who I live with and share a life with, than pretty much any other human being. And then, I have my friends and other people I care about. And then there are people who I've met, but I don't really know. And then there are people I haven't met. And the way our society is structured, I'm supposed to care more about the people who live in my country than people who live in a different country, or people who speak my language than people who speak a different language, or people who share my beliefs and values than people who don't share them. And I think all of that is a setup for failure, especially in a world with, nuclear weapons and that sort of thing. I think our project as humanity now is to literally choose to love everyone at least a little bit, at least enough to be concerned for their well-being and not want anything bad to happen to them. And if we can love on that scale, then there might actually be a chance for human beings to survive in the long term.
I certainly agree with that. I noticed that when I went from being really a grade A asshole to all other human beings to someone who had decided that I was going to live my life from a position of love, one of the things I noticed that my internal war was about was the fear of the other, being a bit paranoid. And it was an interesting battle until I realized they didn't even have to fight. I can be afraid of somebody and still love them. That was a really interesting revelation. And I don't know how one actually gets from fear rules it all to fear and love. And I did it, but I can't tell you how it happened. It happened over time. So High does that all the time. High workshops move people from being afraid of whatever it is they're afraid of in the moment to actually having some trust and reverence and love for the rest of the people who are in the room or at the moment on Zoom calls.
Mm-hmm.
And that transition is extraordinary in my mind.
We take people through a process, and there are a number of aspects to it. One of the first things we do is we create as much safety in the room as we can, so that people feel like they can let their guard down a little bit and can listen. And then we employ exercises in which people have an opportunity to listen to one another and to be heard. And through that sharing, through that communication, people start to feel more connected. And we also conduct exercises where people are able to see the humanity of one another, even if it's someone they might not ordinarily choose to be with. And of course, when you can do that, then you realize that those judgments that you've been carrying about that person or that kind of person or whatever it is are just your judgments. And if you allow them to get in your way, they can keep you out of love. But if you choose love, then that's transformative. And there's a lot of talk in the world about unconditional love. And I see that as a redundancy.
Me too.
All love is unconditional. If there are conditions, it's not love.
Correct.
So, I'll love you if you do what I want. That's manipulation. That's not love. I'll love you if I like your behavior. I'll love you if I agree with you. I love you if. No, I love you. Now, there's no conditions. There's a whole different question about, do I like your behavior? Maybe not, but I can love you, the essence of you, and not necessarily like the behavior. That's why that distinction is so important. And so there are a vast number of people in the world who I don't actually understand very well, but I love them. I want the best for them. I wish them peace and well-being. And if I meet them, I will treat them with dignity and respect and love. That's And I learned that from HI, the Human Awareness Institute. I learned that there, how to have love be the place that I come from and the choice that I make in my daily life.
One of the things culturally expressed, and I suspect it's different in different cultures, but one of the things that we hear in American culture is that people are looking for love. And I find that a little weird that we're going to go out there and find somebody who will love us so that then we will love them back. That's a little bit like the redundancy of unconditional love. If you don't love them, if you're not just being loving, you're waiting, you're hanging on to something and protecting yourself from a boogeyman that's not there, from a monster under the bed that's not there. How does HI deal with that kind of notion when it comes up? Because I'm sure it does.
Well, one thing we like to say is that if what you're doing and practicing is waiting, you're going to get very good at waiting because that's what we do.
That's what.
And, the culture, if you listen to popular music, if you watch movies, if you watch television, the model for love that is espoused in the media is that love is something you get from someone else. But if you think about it, if we're all hoping to get love from someone else, where's the source? There is no source because hopefully it's going to come from someone else who's getting it from someone else. That's a pyramid scheme.
Multi-level marketing at its best.
But I believe we are the source of love. And I don't mean that in some egotistical or narcissistic way. I just think it's the truth of us. Just as I was talking about dogs in the beginning of this, like dogs are inherently enthusiastic when you come home. It's like built into dogness. And I think built into humanness is love, that we are the source of love, that we, watch any mother with her newborn baby. It's astounding the love that is generated there. And it's not because the baby was well behaved. The baby is just the baby, right? And it's, waving around and trying to sort itself out and eating and puking and all that. And the love is just built in. It's so fully there. And I think that's kind of the one of the really remarkable cases that's so obvious to everyone. And yet we can actually choose to be that way with every human being we encounter.
Yes, it's a definite choice, though. We have a brand new baby in our families, 4 days old.
Wow!
And
Congratulations.
yeah, and he was born on his parents' wedding anniversary. I think that's just fabulous. But there's a huge family thread in text messaging about this new baby, and the amount of expressed love. It's the expression of the joy and the expression of wanting, almost causing the well-being of that baby and his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that's automatic.
Yeah.
Nobody is saying, oh, wait, now this baby is born, now I have to express love. It just happens. Okay. Well, anything else you want to say about love or HI or Marcy?
Lynn, yeah, I'll say one more thing. I have had the enormous privilege of leading workshops for HI in Germany, in Australia, across the US, in Canada, in the UK, Spain. And so I've met people from many parts of the world. And of course, many of those are very international kinds of places with people from many walks of life, from many parts of the world. And As much as there are certainly real cultural differences between people from different parts of the world and how they live and what, at essence, we human beings are so similar. We all want to have a good life for ourselves and our families. We all want to have, our kids growing up and feeling whole and well. And those essential qualities and the quality and love are universal. And I've seen it over and over and over again. Yes, there are minor and sometimes even not so minor cultural differences, and those cultural differences don't outweigh our commonality.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And that's a great place to turn off the recording. So I will. Thank you,
All right.
Jason, for
Well, thank you so
participating
much.
in the inaugural content.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for having me on your show. And